Hi, I'm Mike Dilk and you're listening to the Relax Back UK show, the show that explores all kinds of health topics relevant to you, your family and your friends. Each week I talk to expert guests from a range of backgrounds to inform and entertain you. So please do join the Relax Back UK family and stay tuned.
Thank you for joining me on the Relax Back UK show. Now, I've been chatting to Olympic 400 metre runner Lina Nielsen, and if you ever thought being an elite athlete is a bit of an easy life if you just have a bit of talent, you need to think again.
Yeah, and I raced actually just this weekend gone, and after that race was just awful projectile vomiting, which is just, it just shows that you push yourself to the absolute limit, which is what you want from the sport.
Her success is made even more remarkable by this.
Which then led to kind of paralysis down the right side of my body. So I couldn't walk. And that's where they really, really listened to me and said, right, we need to figure out what's going on. And then I was diagnosed with MS.
Lina was diagnosed with a form of MS at 17 years old, but at 28, she is now an Olympic medal winner. Please do stay tuned for a fantastic show. Thank you. I really enjoyed speaking with Lina, and my first question to her was, in the last Olympics, what did you compete in and what goodies did you come home with?
Yeah, so I went to Paris in 2024, so just last year. I competed in the 400 metre hurdles and the 4x4 relay. I made it to the semi-finals of the 400 metre hurdles and then became a bronze medalist in the 4x4 relay.
Fantastic. All right. Because this is exciting for me because it's not every day I get to talk to Olympians. And I do want to talk about MS, but first of all, seeing as I've got an Olympian in front of me and they can't run away, I want to just ask a touch on life as an elite athlete. I mean, what is it like? Can you give us an idea of, your training regime?
Yeah, of course. It's a very unique life. I'm very fortunate to live this life. So I train Monday to Thursday, Friday's a day off, and then train Saturday, Sunday's a day off. And those days can vary, but it's quite full on. I tend to do my track session around 10 a.m. So I'll get there for 9, warm up for 10, and then do a training session for a couple of hours and then have like a lunch break and either have a conditioning session or a gym session. So they end up being kind of like full day split into two. It's very intense, especially once you get to kind of the world stage. Once I went to the Olympics, I really understood what it takes to be an elite athlete and realized all the little things matter. So, making sure you see osteopaths. So then that becomes another journey to take, and then making sure you're nutrition.
Let me just interrupt you a moment. When you say intense, so you kind of glossed over the training. When you say, if you go and do some conditioning and you do, I don't know, a couple of hours in the gym, when you're finished, do you feel like you cannot move and you're about to vomit? I mean, do you just have to push yourself to the absolute limit kind of 5 days a week?
Oh God, no, like you'd burn out within the week. No, so it ends up being, so I would say Monday and Saturday, we bookend the week. So Monday and Saturday are very intense. So that's the sessions where you might throw up. Definitely this year I pushed myself a lot further.
I was kind of joking, but have you actually thrown up through training so much?
Yeah, and I raced actually just this weekend gone, and after that race was just awful projectile vomiting, which is just, it just shows that you push yourself to the absolute limit, which is what you want from the sport. But every other day in the week is kind of, you train smart. You don't want to train too hard because you will burn out and get injuries. So the other days in the week is really just making sure like your gym sessions are, your form's correct and you're just slightly pushing the weights week by week. But no, you don't want to push yourself every single day. You would absolutely just be so exhausted. So no, it's intense, but it's more so the mentality of it. You want to make sure you go to training and act like a professional athlete and really just, don't mess about, make sure you're making smart decisions. And that is another way it becomes intense is making sure you're professional when you're on the track and doing all the right things.
And so is your life kind of watched over from every aspect? So you do your training and then when you go home, is what you eat and drink, is that kind of analysed and watched over? And, how invasive is it?
Oh, I wouldn't say it's super invasive. So we, as athletes, track and field athletes in particular, we tend to just look after ourselves. So you have your coach, but then everything else comes down to you. So making sure you book in to go see your physios, your nutrition comes from you. The only time where it would become looked over is when you go on a sort of UK sport funded training camp, which I went on in December, and that was very much being watched, and it was quite intense. And then, when you go to championships, so before the Olympics, for example, we had a pre-camp. So we were in just outside of Paris for 2 weeks, and everyone is there, the staff from British Athletics and nutritionists and biomechanists and other things, sports psychs. So there's a big team, and then that's where you kind of feel like you're being looked after, but also protected. So, that was a place where you can really start to get those 1% and those 0.5% is when you go to those camps, as you will.
Right. Goodness me. All right. Because it's really interesting to get a glimpse into this world that essentially we see once every 4 years on the telly. So lovely.
Yeah.
So you came back from the Olympics, with a medal. Mm-hmm. And so this is all kind of made more extraordinary from the fact that, you suffer from MS, you suffer from multiple sclerosis.
Yeah.
How long have you known that you had this? When were you diagnosed, I suppose?
Yeah. So I actually had my first symptom of MS when I was 13. So 15 years ago now, which just seems like a different person. That was, it was widely misunderstood 15 years ago. And as a 13-year-old going in with this very strange symptom that was very hard to explain, it was brushed underneath the carpet and I was kind of sent home. I got diagnosed 4 years after that. So when I was 17, I had 2 symptoms that led to my diagnosis and more tests. So the first symptom was optic neuritis in the form of nystagmus. They're very big words, but that basically meant
what's that mean?
Okay, no worries. I'll explain that. So optic neuritis basically is when the optic nerve is being attacked, basically, and there's inflammation in the nerve. The way it presented itself was through nystagmus, which is where one of my pupils was moving left to right very, very rapidly, because the nerve was trying to get the information from the outside world and it just couldn't handle it. So basically it was just moving side to side really rapidly. That meant the other eye was also trying to focus, and it just basically meant it was a very strange symptom to have. I could see, but it felt like if I looked at a specific object, it would be splitting into 2. And so even you hearing me explain that kind of shows how varied and how strange these MS symptoms can be to articulate. And that becomes very hard to articulate to a medical professional, especially when you're 13 or 17. I wasn't listened to when I was 13 because I just couldn't. I mean, as a 13-year-old, you don't really know how to explain many things, let alone a medical problem. So that was very hard to handle as a 13-year-old. But then, when I was 17, I could explain myself a little bit better. And that led to, getting MRIs and blood tests and trying to figure out what it was.
So at 13, presumably a doctor could see your eye doing this and kind of wavering and must have thought, goodness me, that looks pretty serious. But it doesn't sound like that's what happened. It was kind of brushed aside.
Yeah, no, I do apologize. I might have just got that a bit confused. So when I was 17, I had the optic neuritis. When I was 13, I had left-sided weakness on my left arm. So I remember going to the doctors. My mum just dragged me to A&E because she knew something was wrong. So we went to A&E and I said to the triage nurse, I said, I can move my left arm, but I can't move my left hand, and I can form a fist, but I can't close the fist. I remember just trying to explain it. She was like, are you just doing this to get out of school? And I felt
Did they actually say that to you?
She did. And I
thought if you could have made a fist, you might have used it right there and then.
I would have used it. It was really sad. I remember feeling so guilty, and I was only 13, and I just thought, am I lying? Because I can move, but I just can't move it very well. And, that was medical gaslighting. I didn't realize that at the time, but I just felt so awful. And, as a 13-year-old, so that's why I kind of got just brushed underneath the carpet. I was sent home just hoping to recover. But again, they didn't know what to diagnose a 13-year-old with. So I'll give them that. But it was hard to explain that. And then the one that led to my diagnosis, which was quite serious, was when I was, in my when I was 17. I had right-sided weakness that went down the whole side of the body. So whereas when I was 13, it was the arm. When I was 17, it was the whole right side of the body, including the torso, which then led to kind of paralysis down the right side of my body. So I couldn't walk. And that's where they really, really listened to me and said, right, we need to figure out what's going on. And then I was diagnosed with MS, a month before my 18th birthday. How long did that
paralysis last then?
It took about a week, so quite a quick progression. It took a week from the first signs of weakness to complete paralysis. So that was quite a quick progression. They threw around words like tumor and things like that. So obviously it was quite serious. And then I ended up being quite paralyzed for about 3 weeks. And then it took about another 3 weeks to recover from that. I'd say probably closer to a month to recover from that. So it ended up so when I was diagnosed, I was recovering from that right-sided weakness. So there was like a salt to the wound. I was like, oh God.
And is this pretty typical for multiple sclerosis for the symptoms to kind of come and go? Because you were saying that you had this paralysis, which took a while to come, and then after a few weeks it went.
Well, that's actually a good question, because that then goes into the different types of MS. So I have the type of MS.
Lina, I do love it when my guests say that's a good question. You're one of my favourite guests already.
Well done. That was a good question. There's 3 different types of MS. So relapsing remitting MS, or RRMS, is the type that I have. So that's where you can have an attack. That's what people tend to call it. So a symptom or an attack. So your immune system will attack the nervous system or the nerve cells. That leads to inflammation in the nerve. So, the way the nerve works, actually, just quickly touch on this. So a lot of people think that nerve impulses just travel down the nerve like a wire, like electricity in a wire. Actually, nerves impulses tend to jump through gaps in the nerve cells, through the myelin sheath rather. And so when that myelin sheath gets attacked and becomes inflamed, the nerve impulses can't jump between those gaps. And that's what leads to, the nerve basically stopping its function. Okay. So relapsing remitting MS is where, you get the nerve cells get attacked. And then that inflammation can go down at some point. And then you are then in remission. So there's no more inflammation. You're in remission, and your body does have the ability to repair itself. And so you can make a full recovery. We don't know to what extent, whether you'll make a full recovery, whether it be 80%, and everyone's will be different. But in my case, it's been almost basically full recoveries. So in that way, I've managed to have, relapses or attacks and then recover almost completely from those relapses. So that's kind of why I've been able to train like an elite athlete. Then there's 2 other types of MS. So there's secondary progressive MS. That tends to happen for a lot of people after relapsing remitting MS. So then there'll be an attack that doesn't go away and tends to just progress over time. And then there's primary progressive MS, which is from the very first symptom. So for the primary symptom, that's why it's called primary progressive. So from the very first symptom, you will just progress that symptom throughout life.
Okay. All right. So you touched on it slightly there, but can you just talk a little bit about how having MS has kind of affected your training regime and your whole career, really? Yeah.
So, I really didn't plan on being an elite athlete. And I'll say this to people because I always talk about my MS journey and my elite athlete journey in parallel. So I got diagnosed, as I said, when I was 17. So
were you sporty then? You must have been.
A little bit. So I actually volunteered at the 2012 Olympics. So that was a year before my diagnosis. I was one of the kit carriers. So I stood on the track with the athletes, stood behind them, and they would, once they got race ready, they'd put their kit in the box that I was carrying, and I'd be the one to carry the box to the finish line. And it was an amazing opportunity. And I was just in the right place at the right time. I was born in East London. So I got given this opportunity, and it was just amazing. And I thought, oh, this could be a dream of mine. And, you think of it as a pipe dream. But you just never think it's going to happen. But I just loved track and field, and my friends were from track and field to this day. They're still from track and field, all my friends. So I just wanted to go back to the track after, having that right-sided weakness, just to see if I can retrain my body to get those movements back. And because I just loved moving, and I loved running, and I loved seeing my friends on the track, and you end up doing it so much that you enjoy it so much that you just end up getting better and better and better. And then it kind of snowballs from there. So then I think a year after my diagnosis, I got selected to represent Great Britain at the European Junior Championships in Sweden.
No, hang on a moment. So you were paralysed on your right side for 3 weeks. You were kind of sporty, but not so much. And then a year later, you were in the team.
I'm in the junior team, yeah. And do you know what? A lot of people will ask me what my greatest achievements are. And for me, that European Junior Championships almost is on the same level as being an Olympian and being an Olympic medalist because of where I had to come from. And a lot of people will think, oh, European Junior Championship is such a low, competition to go to. But for me, it was up there with the Olympic Games because I came from the absolute gutters. So it was I was very proud of myself. And, at that time, it was only my mum and my sister and my very close friends that knew that I had MS. And, they were also very proud of me. And it was a very special time in life. And once I experienced that was kind of the first bite of the cherry. I thought, okay, what else can I do? The Rio Olympics were the next year. Obviously, I was a bit too young to go to that. So, I was just, getting better and better and having those time goals. I was running the 400 meters back then. So I wanted to break 53 seconds in the 400 meters. And it was just these little goals along the way. And then 2 years before Tokyo, I kind of thought, oh, I think I could make Tokyo. I did end up getting the Olympic qualification time for Tokyo, but there's only 3 spots and there were 4 girls battling for those spots. And I was the 4th girl that missed out. So I was very, very close to making Tokyo. That was heartbreaking in itself. And I just thought, right, I've got 3 years until Paris to make this dream a reality. And I knuckled down and I made sure that I was there in Paris and qualified, as an
Fantastic.
individual.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I just want to come back a little bit to the MS, but also kind of to you, because you have a twin who's also an Olympian.
Yeah.
And also has MS. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. It's, so I always say that, MS presents so differently in everyone. And then I'll use me and my identical twin sister as an example as to how different MS can present itself. So my sister, I got my first symptom at 13. I got diagnosed at 17. My sister got diagnosed at 25. And the only symptom that she's experienced is tingling in the fingertips. So it's just so different. And, her journey in sport has been different because she's been healthy for the majority of it. And so I often talk about, look at me and my twin sister and how differently MS presents itself.
Yeah. So let's just emphasize, you're not just, twins, you're identical twins, aren't you?
Identical twins. Yeah.
So you have the same genes. Yeah.
The same genes.
The symptoms are very different.
Very different. And, the cause of MS is a very, very widely researched area. And it's still not understood, but it's believed to be around 230 different types of genes that could eventually just lead to an MS diagnosis. And it has to be a specific combination of these genes. So in that way, it's not so much that you will pass on MS to, your future children or anything, but you just don't know. And so I'd like to, use me and my twin sister as an example, a twin study, if you will. It's just not known how a gene will express itself into, developing into MS.
It sounds like you've become a bit of a geneticist, kind of almost an expert in this.
I've got a degree in chemistry, so I'm a bit of a scientific nerd, but okay. I like to read about these things, but I just like to break down those misconceptions, because a lot of people are like, oh, can I have kids now? Will I be able to have children?
Sure. That's important.
And there's no way to know that you will pass on MS, and it's very, very unlikely to pass it on directly. It has to be a specific combination of genes to express themselves to develop into MS. So it's just, that's one thing that I just want to share with people, to say, don't be scared of, having that dream of becoming a mother, because there's no way of knowing that you will pass on MS. Like, don't let that hold you back. Have your children if you want to have children. And don't let MS stop you from achieving that, or, wanting to do that dream.
Yeah. No, that's important.
Yeah.
What is your sister's event?
So my sister, Lina Nielsen, she runs the 400 meters flat. I decided to add the hurdles in because, I've overcome so many barriers. I'm joking, but
so we're talking quite a high achieving family here, aren't we? I mean, you're going to tell me next you're both concert pianists or something, aren't you?
Try to keep that one underneath the carpet. No, I'm joking. No, it's just me and my twin sister. We're the only siblings. Mum is not sporty in any way, shape or form. We don't know where this came from, but there's no sporty people in our family. So I honestly do think it was the Olympics in 2012 that inspired us and just, ignited that dream within us. And we just kept pushing ourselves. We're not the world record holders, but we are one of the best in the country. So we're very, very privileged and very.
No, you're not slouches, I think it's fair to say. Yeah. Are you competitive within the family with your sister at other things?
Yeah, I'd call it friendly fire. So because we are in slightly different events, we both run the quarter mile in some way. So I run the 400 meter hurdle. So we'll use each other at training and we'll compete at training. And, if one of us beats each other at training, we'll say well done, but we'll be a bit sour about it. But I think that ends up, when we get to competition, like, we're very used to competition. We're very used to competing and we just push those limits at training. So it's definitely an advantage to train with my twin because, we're happy for each other and we want to push each other. And yeah, we definitely compete at training, but no, we're always so happy when it comes to the actual, the results and making the teams and going to the Olympics, that we're happy that we're both doing it. And my sister actually ended up going to Tokyo and I didn't go. And that was bittersweet because I was so upset, but I was so happy at the same time because my sister was going and it was both of our childhood dreams. So it's definitely a weird dynamic, but it's brought us closer because we know exactly what it's like to be an elite athlete.
No, good. That's a nice story. So you're an Olympian. You are an elite athlete. Now I'm a paunchy middle-aged bloke, but we do have something quite significant in common. I was doing a little bit of Googling, I admit, and I think we both have a love of yoga.
Yes.
So tell us about the yoga that you do and why you do it and that kind of thing.
Yes, I'm actually a qualified yoga instructor. The whole reason I started yoga was because I wanted to find a different type of movement. So I had some weakness. I think I was 21. I had some weakness on both sides of my body. So I couldn't really run. But I wanted...
Is this from the MS?
From the MS, yes.
Right.
And I couldn't run, couldn't really do the usual movements that I could do. So I wanted to find a different type of movement. I found yoga was just a different type of movement, very slow compared to sprinting. And I just loved it. I fell in love with it. And I actually went to do my teacher training to be able to teach myself, but then ended up loving it so much that I then ended up teaching others. So I then started teaching in studios across London and then moved online when the pandemic hit. But it's a great career to have alongside track and field because it's just so different and it's also a form of recovery. So I loved yoga, and I'm not teaching at the moment.
What sort of yoga do you teach?
I teach vinyasa yoga, but I'm more power yoga. Love the faster versions of it. But yeah, I'm qualified in yin as well as hatha yoga as well.
Fantastic. And do you find that the yoga helps the sport? I suppose it came from the sport when you had movement problems, but do you find it helps the sport and also the MS really?
Definitely helps the sport for sure. It's a form of recovery. You're stretching, you're moving the blood flow around the body. It's definitely a form of recovery and I definitely recommend athletes doing it. With MS, it helped me find my balance. So, I had a few balance issues and in yoga, obviously there's a lot of balancing poses. So, I talk about neuroplasticity and the brain being able to reroute those nerve impulses. So I definitely think yoga helped in recovering from relapses. One misconception I would want to debunk is that yoga will not cure your MS. That's something that people often say and it drives me up the wall. Yoga will not,
That's the thing. Treatment. People say that, do they?
People do say this. And
people say all kinds of weird health things online, but I've never heard that.
You'll often hear someone, if I say, I've got MS, my mum's cousin's sister had MS and she cured it with yoga. That is the worst thing you can say to someone who has MS because there's no cure. There's scientists out there working really, really hard to find a cure. And then you're going to say stretching and breathing and doing all these things is going to cure this very, very complicated and complex condition. But I definitely think that there's things you can take from yoga. So obviously, being diagnosed with MS is very, very difficult. And so the aspects of yoga like mindfulness and slowing down and meditation and things like that can definitely help you cope with that period where you get diagnosed and have to adjust life. But then also, making sure that you have different movements to exercise. So if you have to slow down with your MS, if there's a symptom or if you've got less ability, something like yoga, you can do it in various forms. You can do chair yoga. You can do it I always say you can do it on your sitting room floor. You don't need a fancy mat. You don't need a fancy studio.
I just do it on my carpet.
Exactly. Right. So you can do it anywhere. And I often think yoga's a great movement.
Actually, I like doing it in the garden.
Yeah, exactly. You can do it in your garden.
Upsets the neighbours.
You can do it anywhere. And it's just perfect for there's yin yoga, there's rocket yoga as well, which is the fastest kind. There's so many different ways to move your body. And I think exercise is really, really great if you're able with MS. And if you want to, touch on yoga and then definitely find that movement that works for you.
Good. All right. Excellent. I'm glad you like that. And we have found something that we can do in common. I might not be able to beat you at the 400 meters, but I can probably do a bit of yoga with you. All right. So
probably do a better downward dog.
I won't do one now. I won't show off now. I'm slightly more flexible than your average paunchy middle-aged bloke is probably the best way to leave it. Tell me, what's the future for your sporting endeavours, Lina?
So, this year I've got the World Championships in Tokyo, which will be in the Olympic Stadium that I didn't go to. So that's redemption for me. And then we've got various championships along the way. And then obviously the next Olympics will be in 3 years' time in LA in 2028. And that will hopefully I'll be there and that'll be my last lap around the track.
Sights on that?
Yeah, I got my sights on that.
Okay, excellent. All right, good luck with that.
Perhaps
it would be good to finish with if you've got anything in particular you'd like to say from MS sufferers, maybe they've been suffering for a while or they're newly diagnosed, any sort of words of wisdom or general advice, and also where people can get some more good, sensible information, you know, not the yoga will cure you sort of information, but sensible, correct information.
Yeah. So I would say if you're newly diagnosed, and I always speak to newly diagnosed people, that it's so different for everyone. So I definitely say, so MS is definitely widely misunderstood. And it's one of the reasons I'm launching this campaign, is just to raise that awareness. And I'm so happy that I've got, you know, the support of Sanofi, because my platform only reaches so far. And I really just want to get that word out and get that awareness out. MS is so different for everyone. So don't compare yourself to somebody else. Definitely, look within yourself, figure out what the symptoms are, and do your own research. So I'll definitely direct people to trusted resources. So the MS Society have great resources, especially if you're considering treatment. They've got a DMT deciding tool, so disease modifying therapy deciding tool. If you want to figure out, you know, what treatment you want to go on. And then the MS Trust has great resources in terms of finding healthcare professionals. I would also say community is very important when you get diagnosed. Again, because MS is so different for everyone. You might think you're the only person going through this symptom, which you might be, because again, it's very different. So don't be alone. Definitely seek out support and community. I would definitely advocate for the charity MS Together. They have support groups, and they have group or one-to-one counselling to help improve mental health, because that diagnosis can be very hard to deal with. And then I would also just keep researching, keep knocking on the doors of healthcare professionals, get yourself heard. Don't let yourself be medically gaslit like I was.
Like
so
you were.
Definitely, like, if you don't hear within the month of your diagnosis, if you don't hear anything, definitely don't be afraid to knock down those doors. Find the number of your secretary, your neurologist secretary, your MS nurse. Really go there and advocate for yourself, because it can be very difficult to get that follow up. And that's one thing that I'm hoping MS awareness can help improve, because it's almost like you get diagnosed and then get, you know, the door closed in your face, and you have to figure it out on your own. Don't let that happen. Don't sit in the dark. Really push those doors down and get yourself heard.
Right. Very good advice there, Lina.
A lot of advice, sorry. MS Society, MS Together, MS Trust, and definitely seek out the numbers of your secretary, your neurologist secretary.
No, good advice for the MS, so thank you for that. Thank you for being such a fun and interesting guest. I absolutely love chatting with you.
Well, thank you so much. You were great. I hope this is helpful to at least one person out there.
Let's hope it is. I'm sure it will be.
A big thank you to my guest, elite athlete Lina Nielsen, talking about her career and MS and her MS. A big thank you to you for listening. And before you go, I just want to mention my book, Cut the Crap, Ask the Questions That Matter About Your Health. It's available on Amazon and includes information from many of the guests that have been on the show. And lastly, have a healthy week. Until next week.
Thanks for listening to the Relax Back UK show. Join me, Mike Dilk, again next week for more fascinating interviews and chat. If you're listening to the podcast version, please subscribe, like, and share it with your family and friends. And have a healthy week. Until next week.